Hello, internets, and thank you for joining me today. So, I'm not the most familiar person in the world with the 28 franchise. In fact, I'm not even sure that that's what it's really called. But I have seen both 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. And I remember enjoying both of them. So when this was initially announced, with Danny Boyle and Alex Garland returning no less, I was excited, but with more than a healthy dose of skepticism. Especially when I heard that they were going to film the whole thing basically on an iPhone. And I thought, oh great, here we go again with another gimmick-ass movie, stepping on the neck of a beloved franchise just to prop itself up so that it doesn't need to come up with an original idea. And I was more than a little worried about my reaction to this movie as opposed to the movie itself. However, I'm able to rest easy this summer as I've had two different revivals come, and they've both been on a scale from decent to great. Alright, enough of my rambling. Let me yap at you about 28 years later. I'll be spoiler free until I'm not, so rest easy if you haven't seen it yet, even though you really should. We start the movie with Kick-Ass having a kid, and the two going outside their uniquely fortified home village to scavenge, supply run. This isn't very clear. Put a pin in this because I'm going to come back and bring this back up. Man, we're starting early with that shit, aren't we? Anyway, the boys head off and have to be back before the high tide or they'll be stuck out there with all the zombies, which have different traits at this point as they are evolving. So you got the fat crawly ones that apparently can't walk upright, and they're more scavengers than threats to any of our heroes. Then you got your regular run-of-the-mill zombies. They can run, or sometimes they just shamble around, depending on whether or not they've had a snack. And then you got alphas, which are these huge brutes and kind of sort of control other zombies. That's not made too clear, but we're just kind of gonna go with it. Again, no spoilers, so I'll just say that Quicksilver, Kick-Ass, Nosferatu, and his son don't make it back in time, so they gotta wait for low tide again before they can make it back to their crazy fortified village because it's on an island and the tide will pull them out to sea. And this is really the first time that the movie threw me for kind of a loop. It happened a few times, but this was the first. Because I really expected the movie to kind of settle in and give us a start here. Because I expected the rest of the movie to kind of be them trying to get back to the village. But that's not what happens. Because they just wait for low tide and go back to the village to have a big old party. Something really spoilery happens at that party and you think the movie's going to start there. But again, no. The movie actually starts like, I don't know, 45 minutes in, when the boy, Spike, leaves the village again to get his mom some medical help. And suddenly it's a road trip movie with Spike and his mom going to see a doctor. I'm actually going to leave the summary here because you're better off going in a bit more blind. So I'm happy to leave you here at the halfway point. But I now want to get into some of the few criticisms I have of this movie, because then I'm going to go on about how good it is. The filmmaking style of this is very British. You see, normally when I say something like that, I use it as a pejorative. However, in this context, I just am trying to point out that it's very different. There's all these edits that go on that were kind of driving me nuts at the very beginning of the movie, but I settled into it fairly quickly. If you have seen the previous films, you kind of get where I'm coming from with this, with a very choppy and grittier style. And I think that's really what they were trying to do with the iPhones in this. They wanted to use those iPhones to capture that early, very gritty style that they had in 28 Days Later. And also, I'm hoping if I say iPhone a whole bunch in this video, the algorithm will boost my video. Because even though I think filming on the iPhone was kind of a gimmick and I don't always love it, I do find a lot of these shots that they are able to get very well worthwhile and are actually fairly unique. So even though I'm criticizing it, I still kind of love that they took the risk, and I wish more films were willing to do that. Moving on from the technical aspects here, I want to jump over to the characters. I found that everyone's actually turning in a pretty fantastic performance. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Ralph Fiennes put themselves fully into their roles in this world, but you kind of expect that of them since they are the A-list actors in this. I find myself much more impressed with Jodie Connor, an actor I'm not familiar with, but she plays the mom, and Alfie Williams, a 13-year-old actor that plays Spike, as they both turn in fantastic work. And honestly, I'm intrigued to see more from both of them, which we shouldn't have to wait too long for, since this is apparently a trilogy and it's being shot all at once, which the sequel is supposed to come out early 2026. So we'll see how everything goes. So what did I think of the story overall? Well, to put it simply, it was more good than it was great. It certainly aspires to greatness. There are all these themes about mistrust and discovering truth with the human condition thrown in there for good measure. And it's all told with this very good coming-of-age story. But ultimately, I think the world building and pacing let these down by simultaneously being too convoluted and not given enough context at the exact same time. To kind of give you an example of what I mean here, they explain in great detail how this island village works with the tide and all of that, how they are able to block themselves off from the mainland, and they explain a lot about how the different zombies work, but they never explain why Kick-Ass and Spike are even going to the mainland to begin with. I have a vague understanding that they would be out there looting buildings or some shit, but they don't really show us much, if any, of that. It mostly seems like they're going out there to kill zombies and establish the father as a character. It really feels like it's too risky for survivors to be doing something like this out of nowhere. And to broaden the scope of this criticism, they just kind of hand wave away that the whole fucking world just abandons the population of Britain entirely. They're all just like, yeah, you guys created this virus, so yeah, you can go fuck yourself. I assume India's funding the blockade by themselves for free. But ultimately, these criticisms really aren't that bad because most of the world building is just to kind of service the main story, which is a boy coming of age in a world that is just as confused as he is. It's emotional, it's engaging, it's meaningful, and more than anything, I feel like it addresses my main problem with most modern movies, and that's that it's actually made by people passionate to tell me a story. But before I wrap up entirely, I do want to get a little bit spoilery here. You've probably already heard about this if you've been online and listening to anything about this movie, but the ending scene. I didn't actually mind it that much. I had heard a lot of people bitching about Jimmy and the parkour jumpsuit gang, and I just want to say, I get it. It's a huge tonal shift. And honestly, it feels like you just got done with your second favorite prostitute on a Thursday night, and when you go to hand her panties that got flung into your hat, you suddenly notice those skid marks. Like, I get that. Been there, done that. But I just didn't think it was that bad because it's kind of built up in the movie, and you meet Jimmy at some point, and there's been signs all along the way that things were a bit crazy, and I personally just think that they could have saved that 120 seconds for something like a mid-credit stinger, Marvel style. But as is, I get why everyone hates it, but I just didn't love or hate it. It was just part of the movie to me. Also, slight spoiler before I go, but you don't get to see Cillian Murphy's wiener, so it's obviously not as good as the first one. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Please give this video a like if you liked it, comment and subscribe because I'm trying to get this channel monetized and it really helps me in the algorithm. But until next time, sayonara bitches.